The engagement ring sat in its velvet box on my nightstand, catching the morning light like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. 6 years with Marcus, and here I was, 3 weeks before our engagement party, drowning in a secret that could shatter everything we'd built together. But let me start from the beginning, because every good story, every devastating truth, has its roots somewhere deeper than you'd expect. It was my mother who introduced us, actually. A twist of fate that now feels more like a cruel joke. She'd joined this book club after Dad left, or rather, after she'd thrown him out for his affair with his secretary. Classic, right? Mom needed something to fill the void, and Mrs. Davidson, Marcus's mother, had been the one to welcome her with open arms and endless cups of chamomile tea. "You should meet my son," Mrs. Davidson had said during one of their coffee shop sessions, showing Mom a photo of Marcus in his navy suit from his law school graduation. "He's a good man. Nothing like these cheaters running around." The irony of those words would haunt me later. Mom had been skeptical of all men since the divorce, but something about Mrs. Davidson's genuine warmth and the way she spoke about her family convinced her. "Maybe it's time you met someone decent," Mom had told me, sliding Marcus's number across our kitchen table. Someone from a good family. And Marcus was good. Is good, I remind myself. 6 feet of gentle strength, with eyes that crinkle when he laughs and hands that know how to fix anything broken. Except, apparently, the cracks forming in his parents' marriage that he couldn't even see. Our first date was at this little Italian place downtown. He'd worn a button-down shirt that brought out the blue in his eyes, and he'd listened, really listened, when I told him about my father's betrayal and how it had changed everything between Mom and me. "I'm sorry," he'd said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. That must have been devastating. It was, I'd admitted. But it brought Mom and me closer. We learned to depend on each other. Family loyalty, Marcus had nodded approvingly. It's everything. Family loyalty. The phrase would echo in my mind for years to come, taking on meanings I never anticipated. As months turned to years, Marcus and I built something real. He was steady where my father had been unpredictable, honest where Dad had been deceptive. Marcus told me about his childhood fears, his dreams of making partner at his firm, and his plans to eventually take over his father's construction business. He trusted me with his vulnerabilities, and I treasured each one like a sacred gift. Meanwhile, our mother's friendship deepened. They'd meet every Thursday at the same cafe, sharing stories about their children and, inevitably, complaints about their husbands. Mom would come home shaking her head about Robert Davidson, Marcus's father. "That poor woman," Mom would sigh, setting down her purse with a decisive thunk. "She's living through the same signs I ignored with your father." "What do you mean?" I'd ask, though part of me didn't want to know. "Robert's been coming home late, making excuses about work projects. Yesterday, Linda mentioned he's been secretive with his phone, taking calls in other rooms." Mom's voice carried the weight of experience. Classic cheater behavior. But Marcus worshipped his father. Robert Davidson had built a successful construction company from nothing, had coached Marcus's Little League team, and had been the rock of their family for 30 years. The idea that this man could be capable of betrayal seemed impossible. "Maybe he really is just busy with work," I'd suggested weakly. Mom's look told me she knew better. "Sweetheart, I said the same thing about your father until I found the hotel receipts." I'd pushed these conversations aside, focusing instead on Marcus's excitement about our future. He'd started dropping hints about engagement rings, about the house we'd buy in the suburbs, about the life we'd build together. His happiness was infectious, and I let myself get swept up in the dream of forever with this good, honest man. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in October, unseasonably warm for the season. I'd met my friend Jessica at our usual spot, a trendy coffee shop in Soho where the Wi-Fi was strong and the baristas knew our orders by heart. Jess worked in marketing and had the kind of city lifestyle I sometimes envied, freedom to date whoever she wanted. No family expectations, no pressure to settle down. "Girl, you won't believe the week I've had," Jessica laughed, pulling out her phone as she settled into the booth across from me. Dating apps are absolutely wild right now. I sipped my latte and prepared for another round of Jessica's dating horror stories. She had a talent for attracting the most unique specimens New York's dating scene had to offer. "Okay, so you know how I have daddy issues, right?" she grinned. Well, apparently, I've been advertising it like a neon sign. What happened now? I asked, already half amused. I matched with this guy on that sugar daddy app. You know, the one where rich older men find young women to spoil? She was scrolling through her phone, her manicured nails tapping against the screen. At first, I thought he was some kind of trafficker or pimp. I mean, 57-year-old construction company owner looking for a sugar baby? It screamed danger to me. My stomach tightened at the mention of a construction company, but I told myself it was probably nothing. New York had hundreds of construction businesses. But then Jessica continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He sent me $200. Just like that. For photos of my feet covered in peanut butter. I'm sorry, what? I nearly choked on my drink. I know. Super weird fetish. But $200 is $200, and my student loans aren't paying themselves. She shrugged. So I took the photos. They were actually kind of artistic, if you think about it, and sent them over. The mention of peanut butter made my skin crawl, but I couldn't put my finger on why. There was something familiar about it, something that nagged at the edge of my consciousness. After that, he wanted to chat more. Turns out, he was actually pretty normal in conversation. Intelligent, well-spoken, claimed to be this successful businessman. Jessica was still scrolling, pulling up their chat history. He offered to fly me to this fancy hotel in Manhattan for let's call it a fully compensated evening. Jessica, please tell me you didn't. Oh, I absolutely did. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. $5,000 for one night? I wasn't about to pass that up. Besides, we met in a public place first. The Plaza Hotel lobby, very classy, very safe. I wanted to lecture her about the dangers of meeting strangers from the internet. But Jessica was 27 and capable of making her own decisions, however questionable they might be. So what was he like? I asked, morbid curiosity getting the better of me. Honestly, pretty normal at first. Decent shape for his age, well-dressed, polite. He looked exactly like his photos. Silver hair, blue eyes, still had that rugged construction worker build. She paused, a shadow crossing her face. But once we got to the room, what happened? Let's just say his peanut butter fixation goes way deeper than I initially thought. Jessica shuddered dramatically. I won't go into details, but it involved multiple jars, some very specific applications, and a level of enthusiasm that was both impressive and deeply disturbing. I felt nauseated, but I couldn't look away as Jessica continued scrolling through their messages, showing me screenshots of their conversations. The man had been generous with both money and personal details, clearly trying to impress her. Look at this, she said, angling her phone toward me. He kept bragging about his business, his house in Westchester, his success. Real peacock behavior. But then when I asked if he was married, he swore he was completely single. No wife, no kids, totally available. That's when I saw it. The profile picture that made my blood run cold. It was Robert Davidson, Marcus's father. The man who'd taught my boyfriend how to throw a baseball, who Marcus still called for advice about everything from car maintenance to career decisions. The same Robert Davidson who'd been married to Linda for 30 years, who had 2 children, who lived in that beautiful house in Westchester that Marcus had grown up in. I must have made some kind of sound, a gasp or a strangled noise, because Jessica looked up at me with concern. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, just surprised by how brazen some people can be. But my mind was racing, pieces of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. The peanut butter obsession. Marcus and his mother both had severe peanut allergies, so severe that the ingredient was completely banned from their house. I'd always found it strange that Robert could live without peanut butter when most people at least kept a jar around, but now it made terrible sense. He was getting his fix elsewhere. In hotel rooms with young women like Jessica. Yeah, it's pretty gross, Jessica agreed, misreading my expression. But honestly, the money was worth putting up with his weird kinks for one night. She kept scrolling through the messages, and each screenshot felt like a knife twist. Robert Davidson, the man my boyfriend idolized, the father figure I'd grown to respect, had lied about everything. He'd claimed to be single, available, free of responsibilities. He'd paid a woman my age to participate in his sick fantasies while his wife sat at home, worried about their marriage. Did you? Are you going to see him again? I managed to ask. God, no. Jessica shuddered. Once was enough. Besides, I think he's got some other regulars now. He mentioned something about having arrangements with several girls. Several girls. My stomach churned. I excused myself to the bathroom and barely made it to the stall before I threw up. The coffee and pastry I'd consumed came up in bitter waves as my body rejected not just the food, but the horrible knowledge I now carried. When I returned to the table, Jessica was ordering another round of drinks, completely oblivious to the bombshell she just dropped in my lap. "You sure you're okay?" she asked as I slid back into the booth. "You look pale." "Just tired," I lied. "Work's been crazy." We finished our drinks and parted ways, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd learned. That night, when Marcus called to tell me about his day, his voice sounded different. Younger, more innocent. Like a child who still believed in heroes. "Dad's working late again tonight," he mentioned casually. "Big project downtown that's got him stressed. Mom's worried about him burning out. Mom's worried about him cheating," I wanted to say. And she's right to be. But instead, I made sympathetic noises and changed the subject to our weekend plans. Over the next few days, I became obsessed. I found myself staring at Robert during family dinners, looking for signs of guilt or deception. He seemed so normal, asking about my job, complimenting Linda's cooking, and discussing business with Marcus. How could someone compartmentalize their life so completely? Meanwhile, Linda Davidson continued confiding in my mother about her suspicions. The late nights were becoming more frequent. Robert had started taking his phone into the bathroom with him. He'd been secretive about his finances, claiming the business needed discretionary spending for client entertainment. "She's living in denial," Mom told me after one of their coffee sessions. Just like I did. "What do you think she should do?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Find proof," Mom said grimly. "Men like that don't stop until they're caught." That's when the plan started forming in my mind. It was probably the worst idea I'd ever had, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had a responsibility to Linda, to Marcus, to the truth. I created a fake profile on the same sugar daddy app where Jessica had met Robert. I used photos from a stock photography site, created a persona for Sophia, a 25-year-old grad student with expensive tastes and daddy issues. It felt disgusting, but I told myself it was for a good cause. Within 2 days, Robert had messaged me. "Hello, beautiful," his first message read. "I'm Robert, and I think you and I could have a very mutually beneficial arrangement." I nearly threw my phone across the room. This was Marcus's father, the man who'd given toasts at family gatherings about the importance of commitment and honor. And here he was, trolling for young women online like some kind of predator. Over the next week, I engaged in the most nauseating conversations of my life. Robert was charming at first, asking about my studies and my goals. But it quickly became clear what he was really after. He described his preferences in explicit detail, explained his compensation structure, and sent me photos that I immediately deleted without opening. When I asked about his personal life, he repeated the same lies he'd told Jessica. Single, no kids, completely available. He painted himself as a successful businessman who'd never found the right woman to settle down with. "I've been married to my work for too long," he wrote. "Now I'm ready to spoil someone special." The hypocrisy was staggering. Here was a man who'd been married for 3 decades, who had children who adored him, who was already destroying his family with his selfish actions. I documented everything. Screenshots of every conversation, every lie, every solicitation. I cross-referenced dates with Marcus's mentions of his father's work trips and late nights at the office. The pattern was clear and damning. But having the evidence and knowing what to do with it were 2 different things. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling and wrestling with impossible choices. If I told Marcus directly, it would destroy him. He'd blame himself for not seeing the signs, or worse, he might not believe me. Our relationship might not survive the revelation that I'd been investigating his family behind his back. If I told Linda directly, she might thank me, or she might shoot the messenger. Either way, the information would eventually trace back to me, and the family dynamics would be forever changed. If I did nothing, Robert would continue hurting his wife and potentially putting his family at risk, financially, emotionally, and health-wise. The solution, when it came to me, felt both cowardly and necessary. I would send the evidence anonymously. I spent hours crafting the package. Printed screenshots of Robert's dating profile, excerpts from our conversations with my fake identity obscured, and a simple note: I thought you should know the truth about your husband's activities. A friend who cares. I included some of the financial evidence too. Timestamps that corresponded with unexplained charges on what I assumed were shared credit cards, based on details Robert had mentioned during our conversations. The hardest part was addressing the envelope. Linda and Robert Davidson still lived in the same house where Marcus had grown up, the house where he'd learned to ride a bike and where we'd had our first Thanksgiving as a couple. Sending this evidence to that address felt like desecrating something sacred, but I did it anyway. I drove to a post office 3 towns away, wore sunglasses and a baseball cap, and mailed the package with no return address. Then I went home and tried to pretend my life hadn't just irrevocably changed. The call came 2 weeks later. My parents are getting divorced, Marcus said, his voice hollow and broken. He was calling from his childhood bedroom, where he'd gone to support his mother through what he described as the worst day of our family's life. Oh, Marcus, I whispered, my heart breaking for him even as relief flooded through me. What happened? Mom found out Dad's been cheating. Has been for months, maybe years. His voice cracked. She got some kind of anonymous tip with all this evidence. Photos, messages, and financial records. Everything. I made the appropriate shocked noises, asked the right questions, and offered the comfort he needed. But inside, I felt like I was dissolving. The worst part, Marcus continued, is that she's known something was wrong for so long. She kept asking me if I thought Dad seemed different, if I'd noticed anything. I kept telling her she was imagining things, that Dad would never do something like that. You couldn't have known, I said softly. But I should have. I'm his son. I should have protected her from this. The pain in his voice was unbearable. And the things he did. Mom wouldn't tell me everything, but what she did share was disgusting. He had these weird fetishes, was paying women for. I can't even repeat it. I closed my eyes, remembering Jessica's stories about peanut butter and hotel rooms. I'm so sorry. Mom's devastated. 30 years of marriage, and it was all a lie. She's questioning everything now, every business trip, every late night, every time he said he loved her. Over the following weeks, I watched the Davidson family implode from the inside. Marcus threw himself into helping his mother with divorce proceedings, spending every evening at his childhood home, trying to be the man his father had pretended to be. Linda Davidson, meanwhile, was discovering the full extent of her husband's betrayal. Robert had spent tens of thousands of dollars on his sugar baby arrangements over the past 2 years. He'd lied about business trips that were actually rendezvous in expensive hotels. He'd even taken out a second mortgage on their house to fund his activities. She's lost everything, Marcus told me one night as we sat in his apartment, the engagement ring box still hidden in my nightstand drawer. Her marriage, her savings, her trust in people. She doesn't know how she's going to start over at 55. I held him while he cried, stroking his hair and murmuring reassurances. But the weight of my secret pressed down on me like a physical force. Every tear he shed was partly my doing. Every moment of his family's pain was connected to my decision to send that anonymous package. The worst part was that I wasn't entirely sorry. Robert Davidson was a cheater and a liar. His wife did deserve to know the truth. His son should understand what kind of man his father really was. But I was sorry for the pain it caused Marcus. Sorry for the way it shattered his faith in the world. Sorry for the nights he lay awake, wondering if he was capable of the same betrayals as his father. Do you think it's genetic? He asked me one night, his voice small and vulnerable in the darkness. What? The cheating. The lying. Do you think I'm going to turn out like him? My heart broke all over again. Marcus, you're nothing like your father. Nothing. How can you be sure? He turned to face me, his eyes reflecting the streetlight from our bedroom window. What if I have the same weaknesses? What if I hurt you the same way he hurt my mother? I wanted to tell him then. Wanted to explain that I'd seen the kind of man his father really was, that I'd witnessed firsthand the calculating nature of Robert's deception. Marcus was incapable of that level of compartmentalization and cruelty, but telling him would mean revealing my role in his family's destruction, and I wasn't ready for that conversation. "I know because I know you," I said instead. "I've seen how you treat people, how you handle responsibility, how you talk about our future. You're not your father." He seemed comforted by this, and we fell asleep tangled together, both carrying secrets that would change everything if spoken aloud. The divorce proceedings dragged on for months. Robert fought it at first, denying everything despite the overwhelming evidence. He hired expensive lawyers and tried to paint Linda as paranoid and vindictive, but the evidence was too solid, too damning. Marcus told me that his father had tried to reach out to him several times, wanting to explain his side of the story. But Marcus refused to take his calls. "There's no explanation that makes this okay," Marcus said. "He destroyed our family for what? Some sick fantasies with women young enough to be his daughters." I agreed, even his guilt gnawed at me. I'd done the right thing, I told myself. Robert Davidson was a predator who'd been deceiving everyone who loved him. He deserved to face consequences. But late at night, when Marcus was asleep beside me and the engagement ring caught moonlight from across the room, I wondered if I'd destroyed my own future happiness in the process. The final divorce decree came through 6 months after I'd mailed that anonymous package. Linda Davidson was awarded the house and half of Robert's business assets. Robert was required to pay alimony and had limited visitation rights with his adult children, rights that Marcus had already indicated he wouldn't be exercising. "It's over," Marcus told me the day the paperwork was finalized. We were sitting in his mother's kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd had our first family dinner together years earlier. "She's finally free." Linda looked older than her 55 years, but there was something lighter about her, too. The constant worry and suspicion had been replaced by a kind of grim peace. "I'm proud of you," she told Marcus, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "You've been such a support through all of this." "I just wish I'd seen it sooner," Marcus replied. "Maybe I could have spared you some of the pain." "Some things we have to discover in our own time," Linda said, her eyes finding mine across the table. "The important thing is that the truth came out before I wasted any more years on that man." Her words felt like both an absolution and an accusation. Had she suspected my involvement? Did she know more than she was letting on? Later that evening, as Marcus and I prepared to leave, Linda walked me to the door while Marcus loaded boxes into his car. "Thank you," she said quietly, her hand on my arm. My heart stopped. For what? For being there for Marcus through all of this. For loving him the way he deserves to be loved. She paused, studying my face. For being the kind of person who does the right thing, even when it's difficult. I searched her expression for hidden meaning, but found only genuine gratitude. Of course, I managed. "I love your son." "I know you do. And I know he's lucky to have you." That night, Marcus proposed. He did it in his mother's backyard, the same place where we'd had barbecues and birthday parties over the past 6 years. The ring was exactly what I would have chosen. Simple, elegant, not trying too hard to impress. "I know this year has been hell," he said, dropping to one knee on the grass where we'd played catch with his nieces and nephews. "But watching you stand by my family through everything, seeing how you've supported my mother, it just confirmed what I already knew. I want you to be my wife. I want us to build something better than what my parents had." I said yes, of course. How could I not? I loved him desperately, completely, with every broken piece of my heart. But as he slipped the ring onto my finger, I wondered if our marriage was already built on the same foundation of secrets that had destroyed his parents' relationship. The engagement party was small and beautiful. Linda insisted on hosting it in her newly decorated living room. She'd redecorated after the divorce, removing every trace of Robert from their shared space. My mother was there, beaming with pride and congratulating herself on her matchmaking success. "I always knew you two were perfect for each other," she told everyone who would listen. "It just took some time to bring out the best in both of you." If only she knew, I thought, sipping champagne and accepting congratulations from friends and family. Jessica was there too, having long since moved on from her sugar daddy phase to a more conventional relationship with a fellow marketing executive. She pulled me aside during the party to admire my ring. "I'm so happy for you," she gushed. "Marcus is perfect. His whole family seems amazing." I nearly choked on my drink. What do you mean? Just that they're so close, so supportive of each other. Even with the divorce and everything, they've all pulled together. She gestured toward where Marcus was deep in conversation with his sister and brother-in-law. You can tell they have each other's backs, you know? That's rare. Yeah, I agreed weakly. They're very loyal to each other. Too loyal, I thought. Marcus still had no idea that his father had been living a double life for years. He believed the official story that Robert had had an affair that Linda had discovered through suspicious behavior. He didn't know about the sugar daddy apps, the multiple women, the extent of the financial deception. And he definitely didn't know about his fiancée's role in exposing it all. As the evening wore on and guests began to leave, I found myself alone with Linda in her kitchen, washing dishes and putting away leftovers. It's been a difficult year, she said, drying a wine glass with careful precision. But tonight felt like a new beginning. I'm glad, I replied, meaning it. You deserve to be happy. So do you. She set down the glass and turned to face me fully. Marriage is complicated, you know. There are always secrets, always things we don't tell each other to protect the people we love. My hands stilled in the soapy water. What do you mean? I mean that sometimes the truth is less important than kindness. Sometimes we have to carry certain burdens alone to spare others. Her voice was gentle but pointed, and sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who make the hardest choices on our behalf. This time I couldn't mistake her meaning. She knew. Somehow, she'd figured out that I'd been the one to send that anonymous package. Linda, You don't need to say anything, she interrupted. I just want you to know that whatever choices you've made, whatever you might have done to protect this family, I'm grateful. Tears stung my eyes. I never meant for things to happen the way they did. Of course you didn't. She reached out and covered my wet hands with her dry ones. But sometimes life forces us into impossible situations, and we can only do our best with the information we have. Do you think I should tell Marcus? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Linda considered this for a long moment. Do you think it would make him happier? Knowing that his fiancée was the one who exposed his father's lies. I shook my head. The truth would only hurt him more, make him question everything about our relationship and his family's implosion. Then I think you have your answer, Linda said softly. Some truths are meant to be carried alone. She squeezed my hands once more, then returned to drying dishes as if we'd been discussing the weather. A year later, Marcus and I were married in a small ceremony at a vineyard upstate. Linda walked me down the aisle since my father had chosen not to attend. His new wife was apparently uncomfortable with complicated family dynamics. Mom cried throughout the entire ceremony, and Linda held her hand during the vows. Robert Davidson was notably absent. Marcus had been clear that his father wasn't welcome, and for once, Robert had respected his son's wishes. During our first dance, Marcus whispered in my ear, "Thank you for loving me through everything. For not running when things got messy with my family." Where would I run to? I whispered back, "You're my home." And it was true. Despite the secrets, despite the guilt I carried, despite the weight of knowing things about his family that he might never learn, Marcus was my home. Our love was real, even if it was built on a foundation more complicated than either of us had initially realized. As we swayed to the music, I caught Linda's eye across the reception hall. She raised her champagne glass slightly in what might have been a toast or an acknowledgement of our shared secret. Either way, I understood. Some truths are meant to protect the people we love most. Some burdens are meant to be carried alone. And sometimes, the most loving thing we can do is make the hard choices that others can't make for themselves. The engagement ring on my finger caught the light from the dance floor, and for the first time in over a year, it felt like a symbol of promise rather than guilt. Marcus and I would build something better than what his parents had, not because we were perfect, but because we'd already proven we were willing to sacrifice for each other's happiness, even if he never knew the full extent of that sacrifice. The music swelled, and my husband spun me in a slow circle, his face lit up with pure joy. Whatever secrets I carried, whatever moral compromises I'd made along the way, this moment was worth it. Our love was worth it. Thank you for listening to the story. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot. See you in the next story.